Blessed be, and welcome to a spring new moon pop-up edition of Spirit of the Age. I am Miss Wolf Kitten. I sometimes perform under the name of Sash Peppercorn, which is the name on this channel. Either one works. So, today is a new moon in Taurus, and as such, we find ourselves living in a new world. Taurus, as you may know, is ruled by the planet Venus, who also represents the goddess, springtime. Our creativity and sensuality gets a boost from this, just as we potentially find ourselves with lots of free time to explore. Yesterday, the Sun and Saturn formed a square angle to each other, asking us to come up with new plans and even forcing us to rethink the future, you think, which many of us have been doing anyway, right? So the Earth is recalibrating right now, and everyone knows it. We are, in fact, in a new world. We're entering a new aeon, embracing a new paradigm. This is being noted and acknowledged all over, even though people haven't fully grasped it yet. We have an unprecedented chance to take stock of everything, review what works and what doesn't, weed out the old, which is profoundly disconcerting to some folks. I get it. I'm not great with change myself. Once I have things the way I like them, I want to keep them that way. But change is the only thing that's certain. And truth be told, the way things have not been working for lots of folks. Most folks, really. People support progressive ideals and reforms by 2/3, 3/4, even 4/5 of the population, depending on the item you're talking about. But we haven't been getting them. A minority has entrenched itself at the highest levels, intent on reserving all the best bits for itself and expecting everyone else will just go along. They count on us being dispirited and disempowered. They'll lie and smear us and belittle our dreams, anything that keeps us from moving towards the things that matter to us. I ran a little survey the other day amongst my friends, asking what kind of world would you want to return to? If you could redesign things right where you are sitting now, what would you change? And I was able to sum the responses up into a handful of categories. Not surprisingly, the economy was number one. So many folks are out of work right now, maybe running out of money, wondering how they're going to get by. And of course, if you aren't one of the lucky ones who benefited from the robust stock market that we had, the economy maybe hasn't been doing so great for you anyway. Minimum wage seems to be the absolute minimum they can get away with paying us. Real wages have been decreasing for years. If we were still at 1980 levels, you would have $1,000 more in your paycheck every month than you get now. That's not an economy that's working for most folks. Well, anyway, after the economy, the next up was a catch-all that I labeled community. That we care for each other, that we work together, that our decisions be based on science, not fear, that we fund the arts instead of the military, that our votes would count directly instead of going to an electoral proxy. Tolerance laps over here as well, eliminating racism, sexism, classism, separating church and state, and keeping our noses out of that which does not concern us. Workers' rights rated just as highly. Unions, increased labor rights, a shorter work week and guaranteed basic income, healthcare, which didn't get as many mentions as I'd expect, but healthcare not being tied to employment are all on the list. The environment also didn't get much attention, but then so many of us are stuck indoors right now, it may not be as immediate a concern as perhaps it should be. It is interesting, however, that the natural world is already responding to us taking a step back. However unwillingly we've done so. The last thing on the list was one I wouldn't necessarily expect, though given the sorts of folks I know, I probably should. Space. Whether it's reinvigorating the space program, evolving into the Star Trek universe, or, my favorite, fully automated gay space communism. Yes, some of us are looking at the stars even now. Speaking of which, if the clouds aren't thick tonight, and they might be, but you might still be able to catch some lurid meteor shower if you get outside after dark. I know I missed it last night. Anyway, virtually all of these are things that we can do. You know, GoFundMe, Patreon, Venmo, these are all showing ways that we want to pay into the world, the things we want to support with our dollars, basically the taxes we would prefer to be paying, the kinds of things that we want to see funded. And many of the reforms that people mentioned already exist in other, more civilized parts of the world. In fact, I had one friend say, "You realize you're talking about Canada?" Yes, we know, dear. Anyway, we might be further along that path here in the US, but for the fact that we have this cabal in power that has devoted itself to preventing the inevitable march of progress for 50 years now. And some of the names that you'll currently see in the news have been working against us that entire time. Can you believe it? Anyway, we could have universal health care. We could have robust labor laws and protections, even better than what we had. We could have already made giant strides in alternative energy. We could have an economy that works for all of us, not just the elite few at the top. Instead, we have had 50 years of tightening the screws, one step forward, two steps back on every hard-won freedom. But 21st century is in effect, baby. The old paradigm fought all this time to reinstitute control, but their time is over. Again, nearly everyone knows this, even, I'm sure, some of the ones that are still paying it lip service. The king stag is wounded and will fall. And we absolutely get to have a say about what will rise in its place, whether they like it or not. Those who follow a pagan path may be familiar with the concept of the oak and holly kings. We hear some about the holly king at Yuletide, the peak of his season, but since midsummer isn't much of a holiday in the US, the oak king is less well known. The details here aren't as important as the notion that no matter who it is, a king ages and eventually dies and loses his power, and not necessarily in that order. We have been under the sway of the old way of doing things, the old aeon, for simply ever, it seems. But it cannot and will not hold on forever. You may consider the New World a rough creature, but its hour has come round at last, and we are all here to see it born. As I mentioned at the top, today is the new moon, a time when the lunar cycle begins again, traditionally a time for new beginnings. And Taurus is an earth sign and an earthy sign, rooted to the material plane and the earth beneath our feet, but also to our groundedness, our sense of stability, and our material welfare. Nearly all of the things that people express concerns over connect clearly to the earth, to the material world we move through, and our ability to do so safely, happily, and freely. In addition, the moon is conjunct or aligned with the planet Uranus, the ruler of Aquarius. Uranus is sometimes known as the disruptor, as it is also associated with sudden electrifying change. Gee, that doesn't sound half familiar now, does it? Uranus also rules things like friendships, community, cooperation, common sense, innovation, all these things that we have been talking about or wishing for. It even rules space. Hello, Star Trek. And the internet. Hello, me being able to send this out to you right now. And all of this is linked up with the moon, the planet of our dreams and inspiration, who is making her monthly new beginning. The moon also rules our feelings and emotions, however, which means these changes get you right in the feels, as the kids say today. And we still have grumpy old Saturn sitting square to all of this, stating, I don't think so, in no uncertain terms. But while Saturn represents Father Time and the old paradigm, he left his stubborn native sign of Capricorn and is inching his way, however unwillingly, into Aquarius, the domain of our disruptor, Uranus. And if all this sounds like so much gobbledygook to you, don't worry about it. I'm giving the details for those who might be interested. The upshot is the current planetary situation is very much on the side of change. As it turns out, I could sing this song to each and every one of you, and I'm not going to sing it. But you remind me of a man. What man? The man with the power. What power? The power of the hoodoo. Hoodoo? You do. You do. We are alive as the earth is alive, and we do in fact have the power to fight for our freedom. In fact, like Dorothy, the power has been within us all along. It's why there has been such a devastating push to control us, to overwhelm us, to, as they say, baffle us with bullshit. Because people have the power, and that's a truth too dangerous for the old regime to tolerate. Yet we have it anyway. Okay, I'll stop yapping at you soon, but a note about the word hoodoo here. There's this great book that I really need to read again called Bone Dance by Emma Bull. In it, she has a group of folks who she refers to as the hoodoo engineers, a gang of people whose job it is to keep the energy circulating. She postulates that when someone blocks some energy off, takes it out of circulation and away from the community, hoarding it for themselves, that causes blockages way back up the line. A hoodoo doctor might be able to fix that for an individual, but we need a fix for our entire society. And yeah, that's a tall order. One simple illustration of this is the notion that money is a kind of green energy. At this point, we all know that group of oligarchs at the top have been greedily sectioning off huge piles of it, draining our system of the resources that they're keeping for themselves and not paying back in. And this is one reason that the far right is backing these ridiculous AstroTurf protests demanding we reopen the country long before it's safe to do so. They are desperate to get people back to work, not just so that the economic resources don't have to be allocated to relief efforts. Oh no, sharing amongst us all, that's socialism. My pearls, I must clutch them. But also, so that people don't have the time to realize things could be different. Okay? These energy vampires have thrown our system deeply out of whack. And while we have watched over the past few years in particular, feeling powerless to do anything about it, Mother Nature found a way to finally call some sort of halt. Contrary to the song from 1969, the age of Aquarius didn't dawn back then. Perhaps it's still dawning now. It doesn't arrive on a given date, but it's an emerging influence over many years. As a term, it isn't really all that useful, but it does give us a way to grasp the concept of a new aeon or paradigm. This sure isn't the way any of us might have thought or hoped it would come in, but here we are. In the tarot, this point is represented by the Fool, a 2-0. The Fool is ruled by, guess who, Uranus, that planet again, and represents new beginnings, a leap of faith into the future. As the old Topi proverb goes, see a cliff, step off, and trust that a cartoon cloud will rise up to meet you and lift you up. As the new moon ushers us into springtime in this new world, even if it still feels like winter out there today, we now have the chance for all of us to become hoodoo engineers. From right where you are sitting now, you can begin writing down the changes you want to see. Scribble it in a notebook on the back of a napkin. Start or update a blog. Write it down. Keep a journal. Practice mindfulness. Take meditative breaks where you simply breathe, counting your breaths, especially when things start to feel overwhelming. If you can and feel safe doing so, go outside and take a walk. Just find positive sources, whether those be in books or cat videos. Also, as much as possible, put your house to rights. Even if all you do today is wash the dishes, clear off the coffee table, do a little every day. When the space that you inhabit is cleaner and clearer, it becomes easier to do the same with the space between your ears. We all know journeys begin with a single step. Clearing away the old to create something new must similarly begin with us because, honestly, who else is there? In the days of my youth, I fell under the cinematic spell of a sweet transvestite from a distant planet who preached the mantra, "Don't dream it, be it." Right now is a perfect time to put that into practice. You can start by visualizing the change you wish to see in the world, but it's also a great time to start brainstorming the steps we need to take to make it so. The old world may still be in its death throes, but die it must, and we need to be ready to build anew when it does. So please, take a deep breath and a step forward and enter the new aeon. Oh, and when you do, don't forget to put on your mask. I welcome any comments or feedback you might have to my ramblings. I'll be back here at the beginning of May with a new guided meditation, and I'd love to have you join me for that as well. I guess if you click a bell, it tells you when things get uploaded. I don't know. Or you can subscribe and check back in about 10 days. Anyway, till then, I leave you perfect love and fairy dust, and let's get busy hoodoo engineering our way into a new world. Yes? Make it so.